Okay, you're live. Thanks.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Public Safety Committee meeting of Monday, September 20th, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I am looking for a motion to approve the minutes of our August 16th meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes of the August 16 meeting.
Have a second?
I'm abstaining, Ed. I was absent.
Okay, I will second the motion and then we will, all in favor? Aye.
And one abstention.
One abstention.
Yep.
Thank you, John. We do have public comment tonight, and of course, anybody wanting to join and give their 2 minutes at the start of the meeting during public comment section can should email publicmeetings@rockyhillct.gov or call 860-258-7682, and you'll be provided with all the necessary steps, instructions, and the link to join. We do have up in queue public comment. Ed Ciccarillo.
Okay, thank you, Ed. I wanted to share my screen.
Name and address.
40 Riverview Road, Rocky Hill, Connecticut.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Tonight, I wanted to bring to the Public Safety Commission's attention 5 issues, and they all revolve around the area from the train station at Meadow Road down to the actual Meadow gate and just within it. I'm going to go over them very briefly and quickly for you. The first thing that I want to share with you is that we have approximately 20 dead trees along the road. If you go out from Ferry Park, right out the parking lot, you can see a dead tree right across the street. And Meadow Road, of course, going into the Meadows, goes right along Ferry Park to Brook Lane. That is a public road. And in my opinion, it's a very dangerous area. These are all dead trees. And I would suggest that we have them assessed and then cut down. The second point I want to bring to your attention is securing of the Meadow gates at Ferry Park and Brook Lane. I want to thank Chairperson Ed Sharmut for addressing this. I brought this to his attention. As you can see from this slide right here, there was a quad. So people on a quad went around the gate, and here's a picture of the quad. And they, the gate is locked, but so they created quite a 4-foot path all the way around. And I want to thank Ed again. He got the highway department or whoever come out here to put some of these mafia blocks here, which blocked it off. The problem still exists, I believe, over at Brook Lane. And you could see that they went around here as well, circumventing the lock. So we want to get that certainly secured. The next point, number 3, is that quad comes in from the former dump, and you could see the entrance and the exit that they've created right here. I believe that we should have the property owner secure that area and not have quads being able to get in and out. Furthermore, that on that property, you could see that there's water coming off of that property. I actually walked across here the other day. I almost tripped because you could see all of the loose rock and whatnot. It's destroying our town road. Number 4, as you walk along Meadow Road, we have another property owner here that owns the former foundry. I believe it's called River's Edge now. And you could see that this shoulder right here is impassable. So I would ask that the town direct this property owner to cut down this brush so we can walk down here easily. Now, lastly, and most importantly, what I'm coming to you today is really about this section of road that, in my opinion, needs to be safer for pedestrians and bicyclists right now. As you all are aware, Ferry Park is typically lined up with cars to see the river. The ferry is full of cars and people with bicycles and walkers. We have Ferry Park Grill, and then we have farm equipment that comes in and out. But if you're a walker or if you bicycle, you're just going to see now from the train station to Ferry Park, you can see that these two people, one is on the shoulder and the other one is in the road. As they continue, both people now are in the road. If they continue further and a car comes along, now we have a public safety issue. That car has to go into the other lane. Now that person is being respectful by doing that. But I've walked down there in the past and I have cars that would hug that lane and I would have to literally almost jump into that grass. You might say, well, okay, it's a little bit better walking the other way, Ed. And that's truthful. You see that there's a little bit more of a shoulder here, but as you continue, that same problem that exists with the brush, and you could see the car coming at you. But again, this driver is being respectful. So a couple of points that I want to just bring and that I would ask. I've already asked you, directed the property owner to cut that brush. I think really we need to lower the speed limit. The Weathersfield Cove is 20 miles an hour. I would suggest 15 miles an hour. And I would ask any of you to get in your car and to start at the train station and drive 25 miles an hour down that road. I will guarantee you will feel like you're speeding. Lastly, I would ask, consider, can we install a speed bump or a speed hump? I really believe that we need an overall design for this. Either our engineering department could come up, or if we need to hire out somebody to really design that little section. We want people to walk along the river and bicycle to the river. And lastly, I'll leave you with a little bit of levity. I actually did take this picture with the chickens down at Ferry Park. And let's make it safe for the chickens to cross the road again. So I want to thank you for your time and your service. And that's all I got. And I look forward to hearing from you in the future as to what we can do. I will send you, Ed, the PDF of this. Okay, so you have this. Thanks again. I'll stop my sharing.
All right. Thank you, Ed Ciccarillo. Any other public comment? I believe not, right? Nobody's joined since. All right. Before we jump into departmental updates, I'm looking for a motion to add our town manager, John Mayer, to the departmental updates under as executive summary.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I want to make a motion to put the town manager, John Mayer, on the department updates agenda, on the top of the agenda for department updates to get a summary of the public safety as pending the public safety officer.
Do I have a second?
I'll second, I'll second, then I'll have questions.
Okay, any questions?
Yeah, I mean, what's the purpose, Ed? Because I mean, John can jump in anytime for updates.
Was just trying to make it more formal. I had asked John last week if he would be kind enough as the chief public safety officer to kind of give a summary in retrospect over the last year. And we haven't done that before. And I was giving him a few moments to look back, reflect, comment on what he sees going on as the chief public safety officer.
Oh, I mean, is this just a one-time thing to add, or is it a standing thing that you wanted to add to the agenda?
No, this was at this point, it's just a one-time thing.
Oh, I'm totally fine with that. I'm sorry, Ed. I thought it was just another, an added thing to the agenda, but I'm fine. Yeah, so
all in
we can vote on
favor?
it. Aye.
Aye.
Yep.
Okay. Before John gives his executive summary, I just want to make a little opening comment that over the summer here, we have, on the end of the summer here going into fall, we still are experiencing a number of traffic related types of speedings and activity. We are still experiencing the steady droning on of a car theft here, a carjack there, a break into cars. So we're still experiencing that, as well as the trespassing onto private property to get access to these cars, to the invasion into garages and people's yards. And so I know that on the council agenda tonight, there's the uses of our AARP funds will be on that agenda. The additional dollars from the federal government. So to that point, I think we might want to consider the addition of another patrol officer. Earlier in the year, the council did add 2 additional patrol officers, which brought the total up to the recommended level for towns of our population and size. So this would be adding an additional officer to that total. Case in point is the town used to experience between 2,100 and 2,400 calls for service a month, coming in somewhere below 20,000 service calls requested. And we're averaging between 31 and 3,400 calls per month. So we are on track to go over 36,000 calls for the year. So because we can't put a value on a life, and we are feeling that there is some threat out there, the idea of having more patrol officers than fewer, and the availability of them to be nearer by, is a notion that I just want to put out on the floor to start the meeting. Not that it's going to be any big discussion, but we'll see where we go from here. That being said, I will step back. I will note that the governor did provide a grant of $35,000 to the town of Rocky Hill for policing, and that was in his response to our mayor's initiatives, and the mayor did speak with the governor personally. So we feel that the governor is responding to us, and we feel that the governor is encouraging the use of AARP funds for this purpose. So I will shut up and call on John Mayer to give his, as the Chief Public Safety Officer to the town of Rocky Hill. John, could you provide some words of wisdom?
Actually, Ed, before we go to John, I
Sure.
just want to clarify, you said AARP. It's ARP.
AARP
I don't think
funds.
I don't think seniors are involved in
AARP funds.
this. Right.
Thank you, Ed. I think I just want to address the 3 organizations that are primarily responsible for public safety: the police, fire, and ambulance. And basically, it's been more or less starting probably in 2020, starting seeing changes in the organizations. In the police department, it's probably the impetus was driven by the police accountability bill. The town police department has had numerous retirements, as well as people leaving the department for various reasons. And the command staff did an excellent job recruiting and filling in those slots, so that we're pretty much up to pretty close to our budgeted amount of police officers on staff. And as I said, they did a good job getting these people to come to Rocky Hill, unlike some of the neighboring towns and cities that have larger staffs with far more vacancies with their difficulty to fill. Rocky Hill was able to attract some excellent officers to fill those voids from the retirements and people leaving for various reasons. The other thing the town police department has to focus in on is these body and car cameras. We were able to go out and get a grant to cover 50% of the cost of these cameras, and And I know the police department's working on them, and I believe that'd be up and running, Mike, by July of next year, and so on. Then the other thing that the police department did was to take on the burden of trying to get accredited from CALEA, in which they did. And as part of that accountability legislation, police accountability bill, that's one of the requirements of the bill, is that police departments be accredited. So, so good work on behalf of the police department on that. But I think what's also the need is that residents do need to step up to help prevent some of these crimes that you mentioned, Ed, just by locking their doors, removing valuables that have been spoken quite a bit over the past few months, where the residents could help out by trying to stop, the crimes in the beginning The fire department also changed a bit. They added 2 new deputy fire chiefs over the last few months, and they seem to be working out well, as well as maintaining their staffing levels and having people there to cover for the various calls they get throughout the months. And then finally, also in the ambulance, volunteer ambulance, there was a change with Brian Goodrich taking over as, I believe it's the chief of the ambulance, with a new group of members to manage it. And they seem to be doing well with their recruiting as well, having high membership. So that, you wanted me to do something brief, Ed. So that was the way I went from the question that you asked. I looked at it more from an organization skill, because we've heard from the chiefs on what they're doing to attack the problems, the criminal problem in Rocky Hill.
Any questions from Councilor Manuel, John Manuel?
Nope.
Any questions from Pankaj Prakash?
Yeah, John, I would like to hear your opinion on this notion, this idea, which Ed has talked about the beginning of the meeting, about an additional police officer using the ARP funds.
Well, I guess if there's an opportunity to increase our staffing levels at the police level, I welcome that. And I believe if we can say that we need to do this because of the COVI is involved with increasing the crime and so on, then we should fund it through the ARP money. So I'm all for that.
Great, thank you.
My only concern there is, we need to look at, instead of adding legacy costs with an additional personnel, I want to go back a year and a half. We had a discussion that the police had added a police officer that was cut. So we could have had somebody on the road already. And I've never heard an excuse why that was cut. I want to make sure that before we add an additional one, or think about an additional one, we have 2 that were approved, and we have 2 SROs that are in the schools. And I think, we need to hear from Chief Custer about possibly allocating some time from those SROs to do some patrol, high visibility patrol during the day, instead of full-time in the schools. And I think that would be worth a conversation, instead of using, thinking about, gee, we can hire an additional police officer with ARP funds, but we're forgetting that added cost is lifetime instead of just 1 or 2 years. So a temporary measure until we see some relief from the state with additional bills in place to curb some of this crime is to temporarily allocate the SROs to do some road patrols during the day. Or in addition to that, some overtime instead of allocating a legacy cost.
Okay, thank you. Pankaj Prakash, any comments?
Yeah, I think it's worth a discussion, John. I totally agree with you. I tend to be of the opinion that any move we make in terms of like adding staffing, we should thoroughly discuss it. Having said that, this being a public safety issue and with the recent going on for the last year or so, I think it's imperative for us to actually at least discuss ways to enhance some of the public safety around town. So, and one of the things we can do is to increase staffing levels. So I think of this as an imperative on our part as the public safety committee to at least start the discussion that Mr. Chairman brought up. But I agree, John, that we should have a discussion. And I will obviously love to hear from Chief Custer on this as well.
Okay, well, we're gonna, if we're all set there, we're just gonna move on to departmental updates at this time. And fire department is up. Chief Garahy.
Thank you. I just hit my stats, done a couple other things. In August, we responded to 74 incidents. And we're up 14% from where we were at this time last year. We recorded 268 training hours for a total of 2358. We had one injury, which was a minor knee injury, and the member returned to duty 2 days later. We put on no new members. We had no resignations, no retirements, no terminations. And we're sitting at 65 active with 72 on the books, a couple administrative leave of absence, a couple military leave of absences, a couple other leaves. From a recruitment and public relations standpoint, we participated in the National Night Out on August 3rd. And I mentioned we put no new members on the line. However, we have 5 potential new members in various stages of the onboarding process. From training and administrative, the drills, the monthly training, we did aerial waterways to be used as emergency standpipes. We drilled on mechanical rope rescue tools, boat rescue and operations, and rooftop ventilations, as well as core proficiency in pump operations and hose line advancement. And we currently have 2 members who started their Firefighter 1 certification training. In August, we spent a great deal of administrative time planning both the town's 9/11 ceremonies, as well as our participation in the Veterans Home and Hospital, excuse me, 9/11 ceremonies. We also held we held some emergency meetings in prep of Tropical Storm Henry. And one of the outcomes of these meetings, we did have the administrative side of the meetings, was that we were able to put 5 new standard operating procedures and guidelines in place. And that's fireground accountability, initial water supply, 2-stage hygiene operations, hazardous material operations, and we've standardized the hose order. Almost done. From a health and safety standpoint, we're currently holding at 73% compliance for COVID vaccines. One member has received a third booster of the Pfizer, and we have 3 additional members who've received their first dose of the vaccine, and that'll increase our percentage slightly in the coming months. Lastly, the drone program, the standards and guidelines drafts have been completed. We do have several recruits interested in the program, and we are looking at, they're in various stages of their applications. In cooperation with the police department, who was very instrumental in this, we have enrolled 8 members for the FAA Part 107 pilots training to obtain their licenses to fly the drone. Again, thank you to the police department, and this is through Aculine Drones in Hartford, who are providing the Part 107 training free for all first responders. And that's the report.
Thank you. Questions, Counselor Emmanuel?
No questions. Thanks.
Thanks, John.
Counselor Prakash?
No questions at this time.
Chief, yeah, I'd like to thank you and commend you on your 9/11 ceremony. I think you find your way to up your game each year now. But that was a very excellent ceremony, and it was quite intricate, a lot of moving parts, and very touching, as commented by most of the people in the audience, in attendance.
Thank you.
And certainly the mayor and I and the town manager were able to be over at the VA hospital for that very heartwarming ceremony for the 9/11, for the soldiers that died, and your guys performed wonderfully the color guard duties of the, and I know I saw them training on that, and to get it, I mean, because they're being told right then what they're wanted. This is not something that's standardized. It's like, you're going to go here, you're going to do that, you're going to turn. So I know they had a lot on their mind to get it right for all those families, especially the Gold Star mothers that were there.
Thank you. It was a privilege to participate, especially in front of the Gold Star mothers.
Yep. All right. That being said, ambulance.
Good evening, Ed. For the month of August, we had 408 EMS calls, which brought us up to 2,689. We had 9 refusals. 7 of those calls we were canceled en route. We didn't have any cardiac arrests during the month. We've had 94 hours of training in the month of July. The EMT class that we're going to be doing with Wethersfield and Newington will be starting probably the first week of November. We're just getting the finalization done with the dates and stuff. We also participated in the National Night Out. We had an ambulance, and myself was up there. We were at the 2 standbys on 9/11. We were at the memorial service down at the town site, and we were also up at doing a standby up at the Veterans Home and Hospital. Also on the 24th of this month, we will be back up at the VA for the stand down for during the day between the hours of 8 and 3. We did have one opioid crisis call. It unfortunately wasn't done by the volunteers. It was done by Aetna with unfortunately an untimely deceased party during the month of August. We also we're still at 78 members. We haven't had any changes in that. And other than that, we're doing pretty well.
Great. Thank you. Any questions from Councilor John Emanuel?
Brian, when's the new ambulance coming in?
The new ambulances they're anticipating the second week of November. We're
Okay,
there. It's almost, it's about 3/4 of the way done. We just approved the paint scheme and the different designs that we're going to put on it, and then it'll be should be here within the second week of November.
great. Okay, thanks.
Counselor Prakash?
No questions at this time.
Brian, what was the count again on the ambulance? I kind of missed that when you, is that 408 or 480?
408 for the month of August, and which puts us up to 2,689 calls for the year.
Year to date, 2689. Okay, thank you. On the 9 refusals, is there, what's a general reason for refusal?
I'm sorry, my computer froze there. I didn't hear your question.
Is there a general reason for the refusal of service? Just that they missed call, or?
A lot of times it'll be people that have fallen, and we were able to lift them up, and they had no complaints or no injuries at all. It could, we didn't, that's pretty much once we determine that the patient doesn't want to go, most of the time they couldn't get themselves up off the ground and they needed our assistance for a lift assist. And they still sign a refusal that they don't want to go to the hospital.
Brian, I know I asked you for updates now the last several months. I'm just following up on that one injured person from the Route 91. I mean, is that still doing well?
Yeah, as far as I know, we haven't gotten any other issues that we've heard that the status has changed from her well-being. Obviously,
it's nice to know that the coordination with the police department and you, they probably saved their life. That's really the impetus for wanting to know and follow through on this. So great. And then on your predecessor was championing the notion of a new building or a new location. Is that on your agenda anywhere or in your thought process, or that's taken a little bit?
I know that it was the last I heard that the government, the state had didn't approve the purchase for the property. I haven't been involved in any of the conversations or the meetings about any of the for the new building at all.
I could shed some light on that, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
So Representative Wood had a meeting with DOT the other day. I wasn't able to attend, but I know Town Manager Mayor did. And so DOT wants to retain a portion of that parcel because it does use it for storage right now. So I believe they're going to do some type of survey and determine how much they want to retain. And I want to say the whole parcel is something like 7 acres. And certainly they don't need that much. And then get back to Representative Wood with that, and maybe then determine a fair market value. I know sometimes they say you can buy it for $1 or something very, very low, but that's the status of that.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
Police, Chief Custer.
Okay, hello all. Some stats for the month of August. We had 3,189 calls for service in our dispatch center for the month, 17 criminal arrests for the month, and we investigated 24 motor vehicle accidents. We issued 22 infractions and an additional 121 warnings for the month for a total of 153 motor vehicle stops. We had 4 community service events for the month, and our training hours were 142. In terms of staffing, we're presently actively working on filling the 2 additional positions that we were recently given. One officer is 3/4 through his background and investigation, and there was a holdup on his department's end on getting paperwork. So we're optimistic he'll be on board by mid-October, the latest. He was the last officer off our list. So we did have to go out and, post another exam, which we did. And I'm happy to report that that closed last week and we have 15 candidates, most of which look pretty good, all of them certified officers. So we shouldn't have any problem getting that second position filled. And I'll keep you posted as we go through that. You mentioned earlier, Ed, the $35,000 from the state for extra overtime patrols. We have started those up in the past couple of weeks, and I'm hopeful that I'm seeing a little bit of a reduction in town. It might be attributed to the increased presence, but it's still a little too early to say. We only have one stolen motor vehicle in August, compared to usually the 3 or 4 that we've been having prior to that. So we'll see how that plays out, but we will continue to do that right through December. And if it would be okay, I'd just like to maybe comment on some of the discussion we had about using school resource officers potentially as patrol officers.
Please do.
Okay, so, as all of you know, and it's a great idea, John. As all of you know, we use the SROs in patrol during the summer when the school is out, and they're reinserted back into the patrol division. So we use them there. But the problem we have with the school resource officers is last year we had 3 of them. As you all know, the schools wanted every the Board of Ed wanted one, or at least the superintendent expressed a desire to have one at every school. We didn't think that was feasible. So one of the things we did is last year with the onset of crime, we rolled one of those SROs back into patrol. So actually the individual retired, we never replaced him. And as an SRO, when his new hire came in, he was put in patrol. So we went from 3 SROs to the 2 we now have. We also scaled back a detective, I might add. We had 4 detectives, and I've taken one back and put him in patrol, again, because of the need to increase the presence on the streets. The problem with the SROs, John, is I have 2 of them. One of them is committed full-time to the high school, and I have the other one trying to run between the other 4 schools. And they're going flat out. And I've already noticed this school year, they've been on the radio more than they have in the past, asking for patrol for assistance with incidents at the school. So they have their hands full. I don't see where they're going to really be able to break away from that and be able to do anything in terms of real positive contributions to help us out on patrol. The other thing that goes along with that is, we have an agreement that we enter with the Board of Ed every year, every school year, that we will provide SROs. We did the same thing again this year and pretty much committed those 2 officers. So I would really hate to have to pull them back. It would create a hardship for the schools. So, I mean, at first glance, I think it's a great idea, but it just, practical reasons, reality is they're too busy. So I don't see where they're going to be able to make a contribution. I'd be happy to talk about it further if you'd like.
Questions from Councilor Emmanuel?
No, I appreciate that, Mike. That's great insight. Yeah, I remember the individual last year, the 3rd one retiring. He was a floater.
Right.
The other, and I'm just trying to exhaust. I mean, you would know better, obviously, but I'm just kind of throwing some thoughts out there before going the route of another full timer, seeing what resources we have internally. Just another question, just for edification for people, the calls for service. Every single call for service, does that translate into a dispatch for an officer? Or is it handled predominantly, if a dispatcher receives 40 calls in an 8-hour shift and can answer the questions for 10 of them, does it still count as 40 or does it count as 30 if 30 calls are dispatched to officers?
The number that I give you every month is actual police action.
Okay,
All right, so it was some situation where an officer had to be used to do something. That number would be much higher if we included all the incidents that dispatchers took care of for us.
okay. I wasn't sure because I mean, I remember receiving a lot of phone calls and being able to, handle it then instead of dispatching. Okay. And then just for the motor vehicle thefts, it seems like, do you have any for September? I mean, do you know offhand if there are any for September other than?
We do have a couple. I was just looking over the stat sheet the other day. I don't have an exact number. Yeah, so we do. Yeah, it hasn't stopped, but
I mean, do you think we'll break 41 that we did last year? Do you think we'll get another 15 over the next couple of months?
well, let's see. January 1st this year, 2021 through September 13, we had 32. So we have what? October, November, December. Yeah, I think we're going to probably pass 40.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Mike.
Councilor Prakash?
Chief, thank you for that brief overview of the staffing vis-a-vis the SROs. But I have another question for you. Did you say that we have a detective on patrol currently that was reassigned there?
Yeah, so last year we had 3 SROs and one of them retired. And instead of, when we hired the new officer to replace him, instead of putting another body as an SRO, we put that body in patrol. So we gained a body there and we gained another officer when we pulled one out of Detective Bureau.
Okay, so currently there is a detective who is on patrol actually. So currently, yeah, okay. And then the second question I had was, we do, the Councilor Emmanuel's point, we do see a trend line which is a little bit more stable over the last couple of months at least, right?
Right.
Hopefully it stays that way. But what do you attribute it to? Like, do you can you quantify in terms of the police presence in town, right? And give us some context on that. Like, are you having, because I'm looking for like some kind of like way to quantify if we have, it's because of increased police presence that those numbers are flattening or going down, or is it just by chance, it's a random chance, like it's just that it's happening in the last couple of months. So both of those things are related because to what we are discussing, right, from a staffing point of view, right? Because if the increased police presence is indeed like helping us, control some of the incidents, right? At least helping them not to tick up, right? Then maybe there's a case to be made for an additional cop, right? Through those ARP funds. Yeah, so I just wanted to, if you can talk a little bit about how has been the police activity, the police presence in the last few months, and how you have been, doing all that with the force you have currently, not the additional 2 officers which are coming, or the hypothetical 1 officer.
Well, I mean, it's always hard to kind of predict what's trending numbers up or down. And, I don't want to say all of it is because of the increased patrols that have been out there, but I would like to think that's a piece of it. I think there's other variables that are contributing to it. I have always maintained throughout my career that omnipresence is a deterrent to crime. And I have heard it repeatedly on both sides of the aisle, law enforcement practitioners and criminals. I do believe it is a piece in driving those numbers somewhat. The real beauty, though, of the 2 additional officers, and now if potentially we could get 1 more, is I can increase the minimum staffing that's out there 7 days a week, right? So we talked about this before the two officers came. Our minimum coverage number hasn't changed since the 70s, late 70s. That is already changing now with these two officers coming. And I'm going to be able to increase minimum staffing 5 days a week on days and evenings. If I get now potentially a third, I think we're looking at 7 days a week. So that's the real beauty, and that's where the payoff comes. And we're not going back, and we're going to stay at those numbers. And John, as I had told you earlier, I'm not going to use that, that additional officer or any future additional officers to backfill those SROs or detectives. They're going into patrol. All right. And the more we have, the more creative we can be when we go out there. Right. If I got 6 officers versus the normal 3, now we can do some proactive policing out there to act as a deterrent to some of the stuff we're seeing out there. So that's really the benefit for us. Punkish.
Thank you, Chief.
Sure. Mayor, questions?
Yeah, Chief, I just want to talk about dollars for a moment because we will discuss this at council. I do recall that there was a number thrown out of $180,000 to onboard uniform and hire and all that. So is that the accurate number we should be looking at?
Yeah, it's a little on the higher end, but I would use that number.
Okay. Thank you.
John Mayer, any questions of the chief?
No questions.
Sure. Okay, moving on. Thank you for your report, Chief Custer, and moving on to emergency management.
Just 2 quick things. James is still working on our color code chart there for COVID levels. He's got a draft already submitted, so he's just finishing up on that. So that should be available shortly. And the only other thing related to emergency management is I do know that there were interviews held last week for potential full-time candidates. So I believe we'll be hearing something soon about that as well.
No, there was a oral panel formed, and they interviewed candidates last Thursday.
Great.
And we're reviewing the results of that because I was out on Friday. Moving.
Questions, Councilor Manuel?
No questions. Thanks.
Questions, Councilor Prakash?
No questions.
Thank you. All right. We're looking at old business. Update of Central Connecticut Health District. I believe, Charlie, you're up. Charlie Brown.
Hey, how y'all tonight?
Hi, thanks.
So as of tonight, total cases within Rocky Hill stands at 2,013. That's 2013 total cases of COVID-19. Total deaths stand at 127. Vaccination numbers, could use some help in Rocky Hill. We're not doing terrible, but for the most part, those who are 64 and under down to 18 are in the 70s. 70% of who's gotten completely vaccinated. The critical school age 12 to 17 is actually at 58.7%. So any help that y'all can give us getting folks in there to get vaccinated would certainly be appreciated. Still riding the wave of the Delta variant, the surge. We think we might have hit a plateau. We've started to see the numbers kind of wobble a little bit from the Labor Day holiday and school starting. So we still have, are trying to figure out if it's going to level out or if it's going to pop back up in a surge. In addition to that, we've had a lot of big events that have been happening. I think people are starting to try to get back into normal operations through things like college football, things like the Berlin Fair that just happened this weekend. All these big events have the potential for spread for the disease. And, we are in a fairly high transmission area at this point. So I just urge everyone to be, cautious, utilize those safety precautions, the 3 Ws, and ensure that you're getting vaccinated. And I stand ready to answer any questions.
Sure. Counselor Emmanuel,
No questions. Thanks.
Counselor Prakash.
No questions at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Charlie, I'm going to ask you to make that Delta variant go away, please.
The problem with that is that I've got the Mu variant that's starting to get a hold around the country that's right behind it. So it seems like the way that we're kind of riding waves, as one declines, another one will take its place. So, that's why it's really important, for everybody just to keep up the good habits that you've developed. I know it's tiring and inconvenient, but these things do work, and we've proven that they work. So, as long as people do the right thing, we'll continue to keep this as under control as we can.
Yep. Mayor, any questions? No. All right. Thank you for your report, Charlie.
You're very welcome.
Okay, update Maple Street State Property. Brian, listen.
No, it's John.
I know. I'm saying, Brian, listen up.
But Lisa jumped out of turn and took away all my thunder. But Carrie did set up a meeting with DOT, and basically the Maple Street land sale was in a bill that didn't pass. But apparently state agencies are allowed to sell state property under statute 13A-80. But and before they can do that, they need to get a map of the property. Therefore, they have to send out surveyors to do that. And then they also are going to do an appraisal. And then once they get the map and the appraisal done, they're going to come back to the town with how much of the land I think it's about 7.5 acres of the land that they're willing to sell to the town and at what price. But that information is not known yet. And it could be weeks or months before we hear back from them.
Questions, Counselor Emmanuel?
Yeah, I mean, Ed, I just want to make sure that the reason this was originally brought up was because there was talk of an ambulance building there. So I think it would warrant a discussion to whether or not that this plot, if we do get it, warrants an ambulance building. Because if it doesn't warrant an ambulance building, I'm all for getting the land for town property. But if it doesn't warrant an ambulance building, then we really don't need it on the agenda. It's more, town business.
So
the only reason it was here was because of the ambulance building.
Yeah, I'm going to let John address that. We did talk about that briefly, and we concur. John?
Well, I think it initially started off as when the ambulance was talking about having a freestanding building because they say they don't have enough space where they currently are located. And this was one option that came up. And I think more at this point, moving forward, it probably should be under probably land acquisition more than public safety. If the town wants to acquire it, because remember, it's been sitting there since the highway was built. So it does have quite a bit of vegetation, trees, and so on. So there'd be, beside acquiring the property, if you're going to do some clear cutting and so on, there's going to be a cost there. Plus, you're also in between what had been developed, two residential developments on each side to consider what type of use that land should be, considering the residents in that area. But I agree that it should probably be moved over to land acquisition as opposed to here in public safety.
Right. Okay. Yeah, Ed, just my 2 cents, and I've said this before. I think any discussion about an ambulance building needs to be revolved around location, not just because a plot of land becomes available. I mean, this is going from one end of town to the other. I mean, you're 50 feet away from Weathersfield, and now you're neglecting, the southeast end of town if a building was built there. So that was my primary, reasoning for putting out public safety to discuss it. So I'll just remind folks that I'm all in favor of pursuing any state land on West Street, more centrally located, right near 91. You're right between Main Street and Cromwell Avenue, easy access to both sides of town. So I think over the next, year or upcoming years, that our state reps should be pursuing plots of land. And I would assume that the state and neighboring property owners would welcome an ambulance building on West Street. You're right, you'd be close to the vet's home, you'd be close to some of those condos and office parks and everything like that. So who wouldn't want to give up an acre or two, from the state to build a building? So that's just my 2 cents.
Questions, Councilor Prakash?
No, I'm good, Ned. Thank you.
And since it involves you, Brian Goodrich at EMT, I know you already gave your report that right now the building is not high on your list of things, I think. So this will probably be moving over to another committee, but if you want to say anything now.
I also agree with John that we should be a little bit more centrally located. I also knew that there was also talk of something off of West Street up by 91 that could be possibly available also. Everything's in a preliminary mode. Like I said, we're just starting our administration right now. Yes, it is a goal of ours to be able to have our own building and location. It just isn't on the agenda right at this moment.
Understood. Okay. All right, new business.
Nothing.
And other business?
Yes, I have something.
Ah.
When residents are increasing their exterior lighting, they should keep in mind making sure the lights aren't going into their neighbors' windows. So be somewhat cognizant of the lights and how it might affect your neighbors. So that's the other for today.
Thank you. Good
Is that
idea to worry about
that from
with the
experience,
automatic floodlights that go on with the cameras. You've got. I actually happen to be with a neighbor, and both our garages face each other. If that one gets triggered from a car coming this way, mine goes triggered. Then it goes back and forth, and the car goes by. So you got to really tone down your sensor if you can. I'm sorry, John. Did I talk over you?
No. I'm sorry. No, John, was that from personal experience?
Not me, no.
Okay.
No.
All right. A motion to adjourn the meeting. Do we have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Good night, all.
Night.
Right.